I never thought a simple gravel road would turn into a war. When I bought my land, I thought I was buying freedom. 25 acres outside city limits, quiet hills, open sky, a small creek running through oak trees, and a dream of finally building my own farm. I wanted a place where no one could tell me what to do. No neighbors judging, no noise, no rules, just peace. Instead, I got the HOA. Funny thing is, I didn't even know there was an HOA when I bought the property. My land wasn't part of the subdivision nearby. It sat completely outside their neatly trimmed neighborhood like a wild tooth in a perfect smile. I wasn't in their community, didn't use their services, and never signed their covenants. But that didn't stop them. Trouble started with a road. My land didn't have direct access, so I hired a contractor and we built a private gravel road leading to my house site. The road cut across a strip of unused land connected to a public easement, totally legal, all documented. I had the survey permits, county approval, everything. Nobody cared. Until someone did. It was early one morning when it began. Sky still pale and sleepy, coffee in my hand, boots still wet with dew from checking fences. I heard the sound of tires on gravel. I didn't think much of it, contractor maybe, or delivery guy lost. But then I saw it. A white SUV creeping down the new road like it owned the place. It stopped right in front of me. The driver rolled down her window. She had that suburban power haircut, sharp eyes, sharper attitude. She smiled, but you could tell she didn't mean it. "Good morning," she said. "I'm HOA president of Silver Ridge Estates." I didn't say anything. I just waited for her to get to the point. "I noticed you've built a road here," she continued. "There was no notification to the HOA." "That's because this isn't HOA land," I said. "This is my land." She tilted her head like I was a child who just said something wrong. "Well, technically," she replied, "you're accessing your land using a road that begins in our neighborhood, so that makes it HOA jurisdiction." I shook my head. "No, it makes it a public easement. You don't own that land." Her smile dropped. "We'll see about that." Then she drove away. I didn't think much of it. I figured she was bluffing. Some HOA people get a taste of authority and lose their minds. They think they control the world within a 5-mile radius. I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. The next day, a certified letter showed up. The HOA demanded that I cease road construction immediately and attend a compliance hearing. That made me laugh. Compliance? I wasn't even a member. I tossed the letter in the trash and went on with my day. 3 days later, I came home to find something blocking the road. A metal gate, a big one. Brand new, shiny padlock, heavy as hell, right across my road. Someone had installed it while I was gone. At first, I thought maybe it was the county or something official, but then I saw the little wooden sign attached to it. Private property, HOA members only. My stomach twisted. They didn't just challenge me, they tried to trap me off my own land. I called the number on the sign. An HOA hotline answered. "You put a gate on my road?" I asked, trying to stay calm. "No," she replied smoothly. "We put a gate on our road, HOA property. This road isn't yours." "We believe it is, and until legal ownership is clarified, the gate stays, for community safety." I gripped the phone, unlock it. "No." That was it, no explanation, no negotiation, just no. That night, I stood at the gate with a flashlight in one hand and bolt cutters in the other. The cold wind cut across the gravel. Crickets fell silent around me like they were watching. I didn't want to fight, but it looked like I was getting one anyway. I cut the lock, pulled the gate open, and drove through. The next morning, the cops showed up. Not one car, 3. They walked onto my property like they already believed I was guilty of something. One of them asked my name. Another asked if I had tampered with HOA property. I told them the truth. "This is my land. That gate was blocking my road." The officer nodded slowly. "Ma'am from the HOA filed a vandalism complaint." Vandalism on my own road. I almost laughed again, but something stopped me. A sinking feeling, a warning. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was war. and I had just cut their first line of defense. The deputies didn't arrest me that morning. They didn't even write anything down. They just stood there and talked in circles, acting like the HOA had a legitimate claim over land they didn't own. But they didn't tell me to stop using the road, and they didn't tell me to leave my own property. Instead, the lead deputy gave me a slow, tired look and said something I didn't understand until much later. "Look, sir, I've seen these HOA disputes get bad real fast. Real bad, you need to lawyer up." He wasn't warning me about the law. He was warning me about people. After they drove off, I stood in my driveway staring down that empty gravel road. The breeze moved through the trees and everything felt too quiet, like the calm after a fuse has been lit but before the explosion. I didn't want to fight, but they'd already dragged me into one. So yeah, I was going to lawyer up. Before heading into town, I checked the gate again. They had removed the bolt I cut and installed a fresh padlock, so they were fast, persistent, and very confident. I walked around the gate up to the metal post where it was anchored. That's when I noticed something strange, tiny concrete dust on the ground and a bag from a construction supply store tossed in the brush. These people had installed this gate in a hurry. It was sloppy work. They wanted control more than they cared about being right. I kicked the bag aside, grabbed my cutters again, and snapped the second lock. Round 2. On my way into town, I stopped at the county clerk's office. I pulled my property file, maps, surveys, and easement records. Everything was legal, everything was mine. And nowhere, not a single line, did it mention Silver Ridge Estates or their HOA. Next stop, a local attorney, small office, messy desk, no-nonsense type of guy named Jim. When I told him what was happening, he didn't even blink, just nodded slowly and leaned back. "They installed a gate on your land?" he asked. "Yes." "And claimed jurisdiction over a public easement?" "Yes." "And they called the cops on you after you cut the lock?" I nodded. He stood up and walked to a file cabinet. "I've seen this before," he said. "Some HOA gets a taste of power and spreads like a weed. They don't own your land, so they'll try to starve you out, isolate you, run you off." "They're not going to scare me out of my own land," I said. He smirked. "They're not trying to scare you, they're trying to break you." He handed me a folder. "Everything you need to file a cease and desist and a property interference claim is in here. I'll handle the legal filings, but I'll warn you now, you're not dealing with reasonable people. You're dealing with people who think they're always right." I hired him on the spot. By the time I drove home, I was feeling better, confident even. I had the law, I had proof, I had a lawyer, I was ready. Then I pulled onto my road and slammed the brakes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. This time, there wasn't just a gate. There were people. A whole HOA welcoming committee had gathered. 3 men in polo shirts and khakis, 2 women with clipboards, and at least one guy recording everything on his phone like some wannabe journalist. And once again, another new lock on the gate. Stepped forward with that same fake smile. "Hello again," she said. "We need to discuss access rules for this road." "This is private property," I said, stepping out of my truck. "You are trespassing. This road begins on HOA-regulated land. You must request permission to access it." "It's a public easement," I repeated. "You don't own any part of it." "Yes," she said, "but we maintain it." That was a lie. They hadn't touched this end of the easement in years. It was nothing but overgrown shrubs and broken asphalt before I had it cleared. I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I held up a copy of the county map I had just pulled that morning. "You want to talk ownership?" I said. "Here, every recorded boundary line, here are county approvals, and here," I stabbed a finger at the page, "this is the easement, public, meaning you can't block it." She didn't even look at the paper. "We'll see what the court says," she replied. "It's not up to your court," I said. "This isn't HOA jurisdiction." One of the men stepped forward. "Sir, if you try to pass through this gate again, we'll report it as criminal trespass." I laughed once, short and dark. "On my land." Leaned close enough that only I could hear her next words. "You don't belong here. Sell this land and leave while you still can." I stared at her. That a threat? It's a warning. I dropped the map and reached for the lock again. "No," she said sharply. "Touch that lock and we'll have you arrested." "You already tried that, didn't work." Then I cut the third lock. One of the HOA men took a step toward me like he wanted to fight. Another held him back. Someone yelled that I'd regret this. Someone else yelled that I was done. I was already walking back to my truck. But I saw something in their faces then. This wasn't over. I had just made it personal. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I could see that crowd of HOA members standing behind that gate like they owned the world. They didn't know the law. They didn't care about the facts. They only cared about control. People like that always think they're the heroes of their own story, even when they're playing the villain. The next morning, I went down to check the gate again. I knew they'd be back. I just didn't know how bad it would get. When the trees opened up and I reached the clearing where the gate stood, I just stopped and stared for a long moment. They had done it again, but this time they took it even further. There wasn't just one gate now. They had installed two more, one behind the other, like levels of a security checkpoint. 3 heavy steel gates in a row, all padlocked together. It looked insane, like a prison entrance on my land. There were also signs. A lot of signs, hammered into the ground like they were decorating for a parade. No trespassing, HOA enforcement zone. Private road, residents only. Violators will be prosecuted. Road subject to HOA approval. I stood there in the cool morning breeze, feeling something shift inside me. Yesterday, I was annoyed. Yesterday, I thought this was going to be a legal dispute. But today I understood. This wasn't about land. It wasn't about rules. This was a power move. They were testing me. And I don't get tested. I turned and walked back to the toolbox in my truck. Bolt cutters again. I walked up to the first lock and snapped it. Then the second. Then the third. Metal dropped to the gravel each time with a dull, heavy clink that echoed like gunshots in the quiet morning. As I opened the final gate and pushed it aside, I heard the crunch of tires behind me. Another white SUV. Of course. But it was this time. It was someone else from the HOA board, a tall guy in a blazer like he was on his way to a country club meeting. He stepped out fast and aggressive, walking toward me with papers in his hand. "You are now officially in violation of a court order," he said. I raised an eyebrow. "Really, already?" He held up the paper. "Emergency injunction filed this morning. You are hereby prohibited from tampering with HOA safety structures." He tried to hand it to me. I didn't take it. Instead, I looked at the top of the page. HOA versus me, County Civil Court, filed today. I let out a slow breath. They had rushed an emergency order through overnight, which meant one thing. They had connections. I finally took the paper and glanced down it. Their claim said the easement road was a shared access point and that I was posing a safety risk to local residents. They claimed the gate was installed to prevent property damage, unauthorized traffic, and environmental disruption. Environmental disruption from a gravel road. This was insanity. "Let me guess," I said, "wrote this herself." "Mrs. is acting in the interest of the community," he replied coldly. "We take safety seriously." "Then she should stop trespassing," I said. He ignored that. "If you continue cutting these locks, we will pursue criminal charges." I stared at him for a moment, then handed him back the papers. "Tell I got her message," I said. "Now here's mine. I'm not leaving, I'm not backing down, and I'm definitely not joining your HOA." I got back in my truck and drove through the gate. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Yeah." "You didn't listen," a voice said. "You don't get to threaten me off my land," I said. "I didn't threaten you," she replied calmly. "I warned you, and you ignored me, so now we have to escalate." "Escalate how?" "You'll find out." Then she hung up. I looked around at my land. The trees swayed in the wind. My dog lay sleeping in the shade of the shed. Everything was peaceful, too peaceful. I didn't know what she meant yet, but I could feel it. A tightness in my gut, the feeling that a storm was coming. That afternoon, I found out. I was working near the barn site when I heard engines. Not one, not two, several. I walked down the road and saw a convoy of construction vehicles rolling up to the easement, backhoes, dump trucks, and a full crew. I waved them down. The foreman climbed out and checked his clipboard. "You the property owner?" "Yeah. We're here to build a permanent access barricade." "Hey, what?" He pointed, "Right there, HOA work order." They were going to bury me in, shut down my road, trap me on my own land. Not a temporary gate. A wall. I stared at him in disbelief, but then something inside me went still calm. I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't angry. I was done playing nice. I reached into my pocket and dialed a number. Jim, my lawyer, picked up on the second ring. "They just escalated," I said. "What did they do?" he asked. "They brought heavy equipment." There was a pause. "On your land?" "Yep." He took a breath. "Okay, time to hit back." "How hard?" I asked. "As hard as it takes." I hung up and walked toward the construction crew. They were unloading equipment, ignoring me, treating me like I was irrelevant, like this land didn't belong to me, like I was already beaten. They thought this was going to be easy. They had no idea who they were fighting. The construction crew didn't stop when I told them to. They didn't even slow down. They moved like they were on a schedule, like someone had told them to work fast before something or someone stopped them. They were unloading concrete barriers, stacks of steel fence panels, and posts meant to be drilled straight into the road. Permanent, aggressive, deliberate. I stood right in the middle of the road as they fired up the backhoe, gravel crunching beneath my boots, sun glaring over the tree line. The foreman glanced at me once and pretended not to care. "Move," he said flatly. "No," I replied. He looked at his clipboard as if that gave him more authority than I had over my own land. "We have a work order." "Not here, you don't." "Yes, we do," he insisted. "Signed by Silver Ridge Estates HOA." "This isn't Silver Ridge Estates," I said. "That line," I pointed to a strip of flagged survey stakes, "that is your limit. This road starts on my land, and you're trespassing." He shrugged. "You can take it up with the HOA." He motioned to his operator to bring the machine forward again. So I stepped in front of the bucket. The entire crew went still. For a moment, all I could hear was the low, idle rumble of diesel and wind through dry oak leaves. The foreman pinched the bridge of his nose like I was annoying him. "Look, man, don't make this difficult. This is a civil matter. We don't need trouble." "You're already in trouble," I said, reaching into my back pocket and pulling out a folded piece of paper. I held it out to him. "Consider yourselves officially." He took it and opened it, squinting at the stamped heading. "Cease and desist order. Filed by my lawyer, Jim. Served this morning, effective immediately." The foreman's expression changed. He didn't like it, but he recognized it. It wasn't just a letter. It was a warning shot from the legal system. "You install anything here," I said calmly, "and every piece of equipment you bring onto my land becomes evidence in a lawsuit, and that lawsuit has your name on it now." The operator shut down the machine. The rest of the crew stepped back. They didn't want a legal mess. They didn't want to be pawns in an HOA war. Most of these guys probably thought they were doing a simple gate install, not stepping into a private land dispute. The foreman cursed under his breath and pulled out his phone. He dialed, waited, kept glancing at me like I was a problem he didn't expect. Then he walked away, packing while he spoke to someone who was clearly chewing him out for not breaking the law fast enough. After a few minutes, he folded the paper, walked back, and shoved it into my hand. "We're leaving," he said. "Good decision. But this isn't over. It is for you." They packed up fast and left. I stood there alone, watching clouds of dust trail behind them as they disappeared over the hill. For the first time in days, I felt like maybe I had gained ground. But that feeling didn't last long, because as soon as the road was quiet again, my mind started turning. They wouldn't give up that easy. Didn't strike me as the type of person to back down when told no. She had something else coming, something bigger. The way she moved, the connections she pulled, that emergency injunction, she wasn't just irritating, she was dangerous. And then I noticed something. A small drone hovering above the trees near the easement, silent, watching. Someone was recording me. I walked toward it, but it rose higher, drifting back toward the HOA neighborhood like a mechanical spy bird. Of course, surveillance now, why not? I was fighting an HOA that acted like a government, or worse, a cult. I stood there for a long time, thinking. If they wanted a war, I needed a strategy, because they had numbers, they had money, and worst of all, they had influence. That judge who pushed their emergency injunction through overnight, that wasn't luck. That was a favor. I went back to my truck, leaned against the bumper, and dialed Jim again. "They're escalating too fast," I said. "This isn't just a land dispute." "I know," he said. "I made a few calls, your HOA president. She's not just some neighborhood volunteer. She's a real estate developer. Her husband is on the county zoning board." I closed my eyes. There it was. "Now it makes sense," I muttered. "It gets better," Jim continued. "They're pushing a new access road plan. They want a private entrance to the subdivision from County Road 16. That's my direction." "Exactly, and guess where that road would run?" The answer clicked in my head before he said it. "Through my land." Bingo. So that was it. They didn't care about my little road. They wanted it. They wanted to take my land, pave a road through it, and sell access to it. My land made their property more valuable. And people kill for that. Jim exhaled. "We need evidence, leverage, pressure. They're going to try to bleed you with legal fees first, then push for eminent domain or force a property condemnation. They can't condemn my land. I haven't broken any laws. They'll invent some." I didn't say anything for a moment. I just stared down the long ribbon of gravel I had carved out of the earth. I built this road for me, for my freedom. Now it was the opening move in someone else's land grab. Jim waited. "You still in this?" I clenched my jaw. "No." A pause. "I'm not in this," I said. "I'm leading it now." I hung up. My hand tightened around my phone. No more reacting. No more waiting for their next move. If they wanted to attack my life, my land, my future, fine. I'd bring the fight to them. But first I had to go back through that road, back where this started, back behind enemy lines. I was going to speak to someone inside Silver Ridge Estates. Because I needed answers. And I knew exactly which neighbor to start with. The one who had been watching me. There was a house at the very edge of Silver Ridge Estates, just across the easement road. A brick two-story with dark shutters, perfect lawn, and an American flag hanging from the porch. I had seen movement there every time something went down, when the gate first went up, when the HOA mob showed up, even when the construction crew arrived. Curtains always moved at that house. Someone always watched. I didn't trust anyone in that neighborhood, but I needed information. And information usually lives with the people who stay quiet. So I drove there. The sun had just started to set, turning the sky orange above the roofs of perfectly aligned homes. Every driveway had matching mailboxes. Every yard had the same trimmed hedges. Every house looked identical, like they were printed from a template. Neat, uniform, controlled. It made my skin crawl. I parked at the curb and walked up to the porch, making sure I kept my hands visible. I knew how rumors spread among HOA people. I didn't need them calling me a trespasser again. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again. The door opened just a crack. He was maybe in his late 60s, gray hair, faded Marine Corps hat, cautious eyes. He didn't smile, but he didn't slam the door either. "Help you." "My name," I started, but he cut me off. "I know who you are," he said. "You're the guy who built the road." That wasn't exactly how I would introduce myself, but sure. "Yeah, that's me." He stared at me like he was deciding something. Then he sighed, opened the door fully, and jerked his head toward the inside. "Get in, you shouldn't be standing out there." I stepped inside. The place was quiet, neat, smelled like old wood and coffee. There were pictures on the wall, military photos, kids, a woman who must have been his wife once. He walked into the kitchen and motioned for me to sit. "You want coffee?" he asked. "No, thanks." He poured himself a cup anyway and sat down across from me. "You're either brave," he said, "or stupid coming here." "Maybe both," I said, "but I need answers, and I think you know what's going on." He stared at me for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I've seen them watching you, heard things. They think you bought trouble when you bought that land." "I bought land, not trouble." He gave a dry laugh. "You bought land next to an HOA, same thing." I leaned forward. "You've been watching, you've seen what they're doing, you know this isn't legal." He didn't answer right away. He took a long drink of coffee before setting the cup down. "You think this is about a road," he said. "It's not." "Then what is it?" "Control," he said. "Money, expansion, they want your land, all of it. It doesn't matter what laws you show them, they'll twist them. It doesn't matter how right you are, they'll bury you under court filings until you're broke." I nodded slowly. "You sound like you've seen this before." He looked toward the window, jaw tight. "I have." "What did they do to you?" He hesitated. Then he reached into a drawer next to him and pulled out a folder, thick, full of papers. He slid it across the table to me. I opened it. Fines, violations, liens, complaints, all against him. "They've been after you," I said. "Yes, ever since my wife died." I looked up at him. "She kept the house perfect," he said. "Loved gardening, roses. After she passed, I didn't care about hedges or Christmas lights or mailbox paint. HOA said I was lowering property values. They fine me every month. When I didn't pay, they put a lien on my house. They want me gone." My jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because they can build on this land if I sell," he said. "Mixed retail, high-end townhomes, that's the plan, has been for years." And I asked, "Where does she fit into this?" His eyes hardened. "She's the developer behind it." I sat back. Everything was falling into place now. The emergency injunction, the surveillance drone, the gate. This wasn't harassment. This was strategy. They weren't trying to stop me. They were trying to force me out. "How do you know all this?" I asked. He didn't speak. Instead, he stood up and pulled a cardboard box from a closet. He set it in front of me. Inside was a stack of documents, meeting notes, financial reports, private emails. "Where did you get this?" I asked. He gave a small, humorless smile. "Let's just say I hear things, I see things, and sometimes I collect things." I lifted a sheet near the top. "A development plan." And there it was in black and white, a road drawn straight across my land. "They're going to take us down one by one," he said quietly. "But if someone were to fight back, someone who didn't scare easy." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. I knew exactly what he was asking. "You want to team up," I said. He nodded once. "If you take them on alone, they'll crush you." I stared at the documents, evidence, proof, leverage. Finally, I closed the folder. "I'm not just fighting back," I said. "I'm going to burn down everything they're hiding." He gave a slow, dangerous smile. The smile of a man who had been waiting a long time to hear someone say those words. "Good," he said, "because has a secret." I looked up. "What kind of secret?" He leaned closer. "The kind that could destroy her." He leaned in like he was offering me contraband. "Has accounts," he said. "Offshore, shell companies, donations to the judge's campaign, property transfers that never showed up on public records. She's been laundering development rights for years." I felt a cold, sharp crack run down my spine. It wasn't just greed. It was organized. It was dirty money and influence and the kind of network that could make a legal paper trail vanish. "How do you know?" I asked. He tapped the stack of papers. I've been collecting scraps for a while, neighbors who whisper, receipts accidentally tossed in dumpsters, emails printed by someone too trusting. Not everything is perfect, but enough. Take this. He pushed the folder toward me again. There's a bank transfer here, a private meeting note here, a stamped receipt from a county office that shouldn't exist. I flipped through the pages like a man looking for a wound. Invoices, scanned checks, a photograph of shaking hands with a county official outside a restaurant. A note on the back. Thank you for your support, H. My mouth went dry. If we expose this, I said slowly, it could blow the whole thing up. It could, he agreed. Or it could make them come after you harder. They'll bury anyone who threatens the plan. They know how to play the system. That's why most people fold. I thought of the nights I'd stood at the gate with bolt cutters in my hand, thinking brute force was my answer. This was different. This needed finesse. Dirt, leverage, cops and judges could be bought, but paper and witnesses could sting back. I need more, I said. Names, dates, proof that ties directly to the plan for my land. I don't want hearsay. He nodded. I expected that. There's one person who knows more than anyone's assistant. A woman named Marla. She handles communications, sends emails, schedules meetings. She's sloppy. She keeps copies everywhere because she's proud of the job. She'll talk if she thinks she's safe. Where is she? I asked. She lives 2 streets over, watches the neighborhood like a hawk, likes afternoon walks with her little dog. She'll let her guard down at the community center. I've seen her carrying folders out of office at night. If you can speak to her carefully, she'll be our linchpin. I pictured Marla, unremarkable, invisible, the kind of person who thinks being overlooked is safety. That was perfect. Overlooked her, relied on her, would never expect the assistant to be used against her. You sure about this? I asked. No one's sure about anything, he said. But if you play it right, you can flip one person's loyalty and collapse an empire of paper. We planned the approach in half-lights, casual, neighborly, no pressure. I would see Marla at the community center's afternoon card group. The old man would keep watch from his porch and call if anyone suspicious arrived. We'd have evidence ready, copies of the bank transfer, the development plan, emails connecting the dots. If Marla blinked, we'd offer protection. If she refused, we'd back off. Finesse, not force. That night I lay awake thinking about risk and consequence. This wasn't just about a gate anymore. The whole neighborhood had become a nest of vipers, and I was poking at it with a stick. If we pulled one thread, who knew which way the net would unravel? County officials, contractors, judges, names that could make a man disappear in paperwork. I remembered something else the old man had said in passing. Keeps a backup in her safe, copies of everything. She's not careless. That meant one thing. Marla was the weaker link. The assistant would never suspect a farmer would show up at a craft-hand cards afternoon to ask about zoning law. The next afternoon, I drove through Silver Ridge with the old man's folder on the passenger seat and a calm I didn't feel. The houses glinted like teeth. Kids rode bikes in perfect circles. Everything looked harmless and flawless. It was a perfect mask for corruption. At the community center, Marla was there folding napkins, chatting about a bake sale. She was younger than I expected, brisk and organized, a clipboard always nearby. She smiled when I introduced myself as a new neighbor who wanted to get involved. We talked about hobbies and too sunny weather. She loved the community, she said, mouthed the HOA line like a practiced litany. I kept my questions casual, then steered into business. I hear there are plans for expanding the road, curious what that means for people nearby. Her eyes flickered tiny and quick like a fish catching light. She laughed too loud. Oh, you know how it is, development conversations, boring. I slid a copy of a printed email across the table with the ease of a man sharing a recipe card. It wasn't accusatory. It was friendly. I'm just trying to understand the timeline. Marla glanced, then looked away. She folded her hands, fingers worrying the edge of a napkin. I shouldn't, she started. If you're worried about trouble, I said softly, there are ways to stay safe. Evidence can protect you. Not everyone in that board is who they pretend to be. Sometimes it helps to have someone outside check the facts. Her face changed. For a beat, I saw the assistant drop the mask. Vulnerability, fear, the heavy wear of knowing too much. Is protective, she whispered. She expects loyalty. Loyalty is a beautiful thing when it's honored, I said. It's ugly when it's used to hurt people. Marla swallowed. She folded and refolded a napkin. Then, almost inaudible, she said, I have copies, emails, a transfer receipt. I keep them because sometimes I worry. Sometimes I think we'll do something that steps too far. My heart thudded. Would you let me see them? I asked. She looked around like someone about to commit a theft, then slid a small envelope across her knees toward me. Inside were photocopies, an internal memo, dates circled, a name that matched one of the county officials in the photograph. I felt the world narrow to that envelope, proof in hand, leverage within reach. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. I glanced down. One message. From a number I didn't recognize. It read, We're watching, stop now. I looked up at Marla. Her face had gone white. They know you're here, she said. And in the lobby window, reflected behind my face, I saw a shape moving, SUV, idling at the curb as if she had expected me all along. Didn't get out of she just sat there with the engine running, headlights burning through the glass doors of the community center like a silent warning. She didn't need to step inside to make her point. She wanted me to know she saw me, that she had eyes everywhere, that she controlled every inch of this town like it was a dollhouse, and she was the hand of God. Marla stared at the headlights, frozen. Her voice was barely a whisper. You shouldn't have come here. I slipped the envelope into my jacket. I needed answers. You don't understand, she said. Doesn't just scare people, she destroys them. You go against her, you don't just lose, you disappear. Jobs vanish, property gets seized, debts get created. Your life falls apart piece by piece until you can't breathe. I'm not here to play safe, I said. She stared at me, studying my face like she needed to decide something important. Maybe she was realizing I wasn't bluffing. Maybe she was deciding she didn't want to die on the wrong side of this. Then you better start learning how big this really is, she said, voice shaking. Because once you're in it, there's no way back. I leaned closer. Tell me everything. Not here, she said, glancing at the again. Meet me tonight. Silver Ridge Office Park, Building C lower parking garage. 11 o'clock. If I'm not there, leave and forget you ever saw me. And don't bring anyone. She stood, gathered her folders like nothing had happened, and walked away. Just another pleasant afternoon in the homeowners association from hell. She didn't look back. I didn't move until she was gone. Stayed in the parking lot a solid minute more, then slowly pulled away. I walked out to my truck, feeling the weight of that envelope under my jacket like a hot coal. The sky was the flat color of steel, and the air felt tight like a storm building pressure. I didn't start the engine right away. I sat with my hands on the wheel and watched the town. Watched neighbors water lawns, watched kids on scooters, watched men trimming hedges so perfectly they looked measured. Everything in this place was controlled, and I finally knew by who. I drove straight to the old man's house and walked in without knocking. He was sitting by the window, polishing a pair of binoculars like the world's most bitter bird watcher. She gave you something, he said, not a question, a statement. I nodded and tossed the envelope down in front of him. He opened it, and for the first time since I met him, I saw something dangerous in his eyes. Hope. This is a crack in the wall. She wants to meet tonight, I said. Alone. He shook his head instantly. No chance, that's a trap. Showing up at the community center wasn't an accident, that was theater. If Marla's scared, it means she knows something, I said. Something worth silencing. Or it means she's bait. I leaned on the table. You told me yourself that if we pull the right thread, this all comes apart. Marla is that thread. The old man rubbed his jaw. Then you better be ready, you might be walking straight at a noose. He stood up and reached for a small lockbox on his shelf. He clicked it open, revealing a radio scanner, a burner phone, and a shortwave receiver. Take this. If something goes wrong, I'll hear it. I frowned. I thought you said not to go. I thought you'd listen, he said. But if you're going, you're not going blind. Then he pushed something else across the table. A slim black recorder. "Always record fear," he said. "Fear is honesty." I drove to the Silver Ridge office park that night with the scanner in the seat beside me and my eyes on the mirrors the whole way. The place was half abandoned, one of stalled redevelopment projects, probably. Perfect for a quiet little meeting no one would ever trace. Building C sat at the far end of the lot, dark except for one flickering light above the garage ramp. Shadows cut into pieces on the concrete. I pulled in slow. Nothing moved. I stepped out of the truck, heart steady but alert. No cars, no footsteps, just the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant echo of dripping water. I took the recorder from my pocket and clicked it on. "Marla," I called out softly. "Nothing." I walked deeper into the garage. A low concrete beam dripped condensation. The air smelled like oil and dust. My footsteps echoed. Then I saw it. A folder placed neatly on the hood of a parked sedan, like a gift. I looked around, still alone. I reached for it cautiously, slid it open, and froze. Inside were surveillance photos of me, at the farm, at the gate, talking to the old man, sitting inside my truck, pulling my mail, working on the fence line. One photo of me sleeping inside the truck cab. My blood turned to ice. Someone had been watching me for weeks, someone close, someone organized. And under the photos, a note. 4 words. "You picked the wrong war." A sound scraped behind me. I turned. Someone was there in the dark, watching. Waiting. I wasn't alone anymore. And whoever had come wasn't here to talk. The sound behind me wasn't loud, just a small shuffle on concrete, but it crawled up my spine like a warning straight out of instinct. I didn't move right away. I listened. The garage felt colder now, like the air itself had retreated into the shadows. Someone was there, someone patient, someone who didn't feel the need to rush. I slid the folder shut and lowered it slowly, keeping my eyes forward even as my pulse began to hammer. "Guess we're doing this face to face," I said into the silence. A voice came from the dark, calm, almost casual. "You should have stayed on your farm." A man stepped into the weak light, hands in his coat pockets. I recognized him even before I fully understood why. He was the same guy who had shown up outside the courtroom weeks ago. Same guy who had stood near at town meetings, never spoke, never voted, never smiled, just watched, just listened. "You've been following me," I said. "Everyone gets watched eventually," he said. "Some people just don't notice until it's too late." I kept my tone steady. "You working private security for now, or do you just enjoy creeping around in parking garages after dark?" He didn't blink. "I work for results, and right now the result I want is you walking away from this, permanently." I smirked. "That's supposed to scare me." "No," he said, "this is." He pulled a small remote from his pocket and pressed a button. A sound filled the garage, clattering metal, sliding chain. The entrance gate behind me dropped shut. Another gate across the exit sealed with a slam. They trapped me inside. "Interesting hospitality," I said. "Always like being locked in with total strangers, makes a man feel welcome." He stepped closer. "You don't know what you've walked into. This isn't about it anymore. This is business. Big business, and you've made yourself a liability." "All I did was build a road," I said. He laughed once. "Lo, you built a door into the one piece of land didn't control, a perfect corridor for a future private development road. You exposed a gap in her map. She can't let that stand." "So she sent you to what? Scare me?" His face didn't change. "I'm here to give you a choice." "Walk away," I said. "Sell them my land, let the bully win. Sorry, that ending doesn't play for me." He stared at me like I was already gone. "No, your choices are a little narrower than that." He held up 2 fingers. "You disappear quietly tonight, or you disappear loudly and painfully, but either way, you disappear." The threat hung between us like a blade. I didn't flinch. Instead, I reached into my jacket and pulled out the small recorder the old man had given me. I turned it so he could see the red light blinking. "You always this chatty when making threats?" I asked. Because you're giving me some excellent material. His eyes went flat. Then he reached out and smashed the recorder against the floor with a single step. Plastic cracked, wires sizzled, dead. You think we didn't expect that? He said. I shrugged, worth a shot. His jaw tightened. You're done here. He reached inside his coat. Fast, too fast. I didn't wait to see what came out. I moved. I lunged behind the parked car, hearing a metallic click behind me. A gun. I grabbed the folder of surveillance photos and slid across the concrete, heart pounding. The guy moved slow, controlled, no panic. A professional. I swept my eyes around the garage. Shadowed pillars, heavy pipes overhead. Stairwell door 50 feet to my left. Too far, truck behind me. Useless. Options thinning fast. Think. I ducked low, moved between cars. He followed without rushing, like he was hurting me, pushing me somewhere. I tried the stairwell door, locked. He cocked the gun behind me. I lifted my hands. You sure this is the job you want? Killing farmers in parking garages for? I don't ask questions, he said. I eliminate obstacles. He raised the gun. A sudden burst of static cracked through the air. Loud, close. Then a voice like gravel came bursting through a speaker somewhere nearby. It was the old man. You're boxed in, kid. Camera in the southeast corner. They know you're in there. You've got company headed your way. Get low and move. The guy with the gun spun, scanning the shadows. His face changed. Just a flicker, but it was enough. He didn't expect eyes on him. I dropped to the ground as a loud crash echoed from the far side of the garage. Something metal hit concrete hard. A distraction. The old man had sent help, or maybe he came himself. I didn't wait to ask. I grabbed a loose metal pipe from the floor and hurled it across the garage. It clanged and sparked. The gun swung toward the sound. I sprinted for the support pillar, then bolted toward the exit ramp. Metal screamed behind me as bullets tore into a car frame. I didn't stop. I hit the emergency gate hard and ripped at the chain. Too thick. No time. I yanked the tarp off a nearby construction generator and slammed the machine forward. Sparks lit. Metal groaned. The bottom gate bent. Enough space. I dropped, hit the ground shoulder first, and rolled beneath the gate into the night air outside. I didn't look back. I tore out of that parking lot and didn't stop until I hit the highway. Only then did I let out the breath I'd been holding. I pulled over, hands shaking, engine idling. I stared through the windshield. This wasn't a neighborhood fight anymore. This was an organized ring of corruption with money, muscle, and reach. Was just the face of it. But now they had made a mistake. They came after me in the dark. And I don't scare in the dark. I picked up my phone. Called the old man. We go loud, I said. He paused. You sure? They wanted a war, I said. Now they're going to get one. Because I finally understood what they really feared. Not the land. Not the road. Not me. They feared the truth. And I was done being quiet. You've heard this confession, now wait until you hear the next one. The truth that shatters everything you thought you knew.